Justin Leppitsch was one of several great players at Brisbane in the early 2000s who lived in the huge shadow cast by the Fab Four. 14 years on, Leppitsch has taken his premiership haul to 4, this time as an influential member of Richmond's 2017 coaching panel. In between, there was what you might call a character-building 3 years as Brisbane coach. Welcome, Justin. It's been an eventful 25-year ride since you were drafted in 1992.
Yeah, lots going on, Mike. 25 years in the game, it's a long time, isn't it?
You were a chirpy kid, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I'm different than what I am now, but I was excitable and probably did things that young, inexperienced people do, and you look back and probably cringe.
Some would say I'd say chirpy. Some would say cocky.
Yeah, probably cocky, but I think it more stemmed from, and maybe that's the look of it, but I think it's more of a life of the party type look of how I like and how I like to have fun on a footy field, particularly as a young person. And I coach players now that are similar. Even Jack is a little bit similar to that at Richmond now. And as you grow up, you get more mature and your behaviours tend to get better. So I try and leave those days behind me, Mike. So.
Sorry, mate. You're a 17-year-old from Melbourne. You're playing under Robert Walls in Brisbane. Halfway through your first season, you do your ACL. What did that do to your psyche at the time?
It's hard. You're so young and dumb at that age, and you think you're bulletproof. And because I also blew out the lateral ligament too, so it's a very rare injury and a tough rehab. So I didn't put any more thought into it. I'm going to get back from this and play league footy. I mean, I think when you're a bit older, you realise the potential chance of things not happening. But at that age, it was all systems go, and that's not going to stop me. So that's all I was thinking at the time.
We used to refer to you in the media at the time as a spasmodic full forward. Is that a fair description?
That's probably the nicest way you could put it, to be honest. But yeah, I like kicking goals and probably doing the things that the crowd like to see more than what my teammates like to see. And that's and as a coach now, you see that. You appreciate all the little things that go in between the good skill efforts and things like that. So as I probably didn't appreciate that part of the game as a young player, it was more about the fun part of it, the show part of it. And that probably the penny didn't drop for me for a fair while with that.
Well, it was a fair while take you to 1999 and the arrival of one Leigh Matthews.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. Leigh coming, I mean, at the end of '98 we finished on the bottom and I was, like a lot of us, tempted to leave at that point. I think that was the point where I thought, this isn't working here in Brisbane. And but then when Leigh and Gubby and that crew came on board, it was like, no, there's light at the end of the tunnel here, because we knew the list was relatively good. We just couldn't get it all together. So and Leigh decided at that point, yeah, put me to full back and change to this inconsistent forward and probably give me more of a life down there. And
you won the best and fairest in that year.
Yeah, it was. It was a big turnaround, and I still think I probably played defence with a bit of flair also, but there's so much more responsibility in defence to make sure the opposition don't score. So I think that sense of responsibility probably gave me a better balance in my game.
You said, I should have picked you up before, you said you were tempted about to come home. Did that temptation ever sort of get close to being realised? After year 2, I actually packed up and left to not come back to the Lions, or Bears at the time, funny enough. And a deal just couldn't get struck. No one was really interested. It's quite funny, you have a pick 4 in the draft 2 years later that's not interested nowadays. No one was?
No, you get, I had a little bit of a conversation with John Hook at the time at Hawthorn, and there was some cold interest there, but nothing really eventuated. So I had to sort of pack up, come back up to Brisbane in my 3rd season.
19-year-olds don't carry much, mate.
No,
Wouldn't have taken you long.
No, I didn't need much. No.
What about at the end of 2000, Justin?
Yeah,
now, you weren't to know what was coming, but St Kilda went after you hard, didn't they?
Yeah, and it was quite funny. Ricky Nixon was my manager at the time, and I was sitting at home. We're out of contract, and back then, you look at contracts around about mid-year, around 16. Nowadays they're years in advance. You sign up your players, but Ricky said to me, "You're sitting down." I go, "Yeah, I was at the time." He goes, "St Kilda wants you to come." I go, "Oh, really?" I said, "Look, I'm pretty happy at Brisbane. St Kilda were about to go through a rebuild." And he goes, "Well, they've just offered you $2 million over 3 years."
$2 million? This is the year 2000?
Yeah.
17 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow, that's 700 grand a year.
Yeah. Well, I would have been the highest paid player in the competition. And two things, that would have a lot of pressure, obviously, that comes along with that. It just... Obviously, if it was a money decision, you go, I stayed for Brisbane for much less, almost nearly half of that to be honest. So it was, so it wasn't definitely not a money decision back at that point in time. It was always been about success for me. But geez, it's quite a funny time, because I know at that time I think they recruited Fraser Gehrig and Aaron Hamill and a few others. I think with that money,
all for your price.
I think that's what happened at the time. I mean, maybe there's people at St Kilda might have a slightly different story, but that's what was presented to me with Ricky at the time.
Did you dismiss it out of hand immediately, or did you have a think about it?
No, it didn't take me long to say no. When I worked out that it was around about 15 or 16% of the cap at that point in time, and there was no support. As a defender, you need support. You need a strong midfield that the ball's not coming in a lot, and some experience around you to make you. Also, as a defender, I wasn't your hard-nosed Preston Giacomo type defender.
No, you were not.
I was not. I needed to be able to mark the ball and intercept the ball and have some decent pressure upfield to play well and to use my strengths. So I knew I wasn't going to get that either. So. Yeah, I didn't want to be the high-priced player to walk in and also not perform. So that probably was an overriding factor too. And namely, I was happy at Brisbane, which is the number one.
What about the Matthews influence? That would have been, you would have had 2 years under him, win a best and fairest in your first year under him, and then you could see this football club was emerging, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I think he's third in the second year as well. So yeah, I was in fairly good football form. The club was consistently playing finals football, so it would have been a massive risk. To leave for another club at that time.
You and Leigh got on well, didn't you?
Yeah, we do. We still do.
Yeah. My understanding is from your mates that you were never intimidated by him. You got on well with him. It was a genuine warmth, but you were prepared to challenge him, weren't you? Yeah,
and that's because Leigh didn't mind that. I know a lot of people are too scared to talk to Leigh and have honest conversations.
He's an exalted figure, isn't he?
Oh, he is. And of course there's certain things, it's not no holds barred, my God. I respect the guy enough to not take that too far in that relationship and be silly and disrespectful. But he was the sort of guy that liked to be challenged in that way, Leigh, and liked people with ideas. But we are, in a lot of ways, very similar, but absolute opposites in a lot of things as well.
I want you to take me back to an exchange you had with Leigh after one of the premierships.
It was 2003. It was last year. It was just a bit of fun. And look, I'm the sort of guy that don't like awkward silences. So it's quite funny. We were heading into a lift up to the top to see, I guess, to get presented to the crowd after the 2003 grand final. And there was service lifts at the back of Crown, so they're quite large, and there was quite a few people in there, around 20 odd people in that service lift. But for some unknown reason, there was just complete silence. No one was speaking. Now, you would have thought it's probably the most chirpiest and happiest time, but it just went silent for all of maybe 3 seconds. And I looked at Leigh and said, "You'd be nothing without us, Leigh." and that got a little bit of a laugh, because I always like to jab little things like that at Leigh, but he actually is a really funny guy and always gives a response, and his response was, "You're right, Leppa, I'd only be player of the century without you guys." So he was always good for a little quit back, Leigh.
No matter how many times you hear that story, it's still funny.
Yeah, it is. And it was he's very good at that, Leigh. He used to get me every time I used to throw something like that at him.
At the end of 2004, you were going for 4 flags in a row and missed out at Port Adelaide's hands. I hear, were the players a bit disappointed with the way Leigh responded to that?
Straight after the game, words to the effect of "you blew it" probably, was the sort of the theme coming out of it from Leigh, which is very unlike him. And look, it's only words. I think we're all so hurt and so disappointed after that game. Let's be honest, we won 3 grand finals out of 4. You look back and think, it's a pretty good effort. But at that point in time, everyone was pretty hurt. I think a lot of guys in the club were a bit disappointed also at the fixturing at the time. The preliminary final where it was played, and there's a lot of negativity surrounding that potential work that week, which ended up in the loss. And so, I'm not the sort of guy to get hung up on words like that. I think at the end of the day, we're beaten by a better team. As simple as that, and that can happen.
When I said before that you won the best and fairest in 1999, you actually tied with a bloke named Jason Ackermanis. The relationship with Acker and a lot of his teammates is interesting, but particularly with you. He wrote something amazing, I thought extraordinary, in his book Open Season. This is Acker. "I'm quite certain there were times in games when you, didn't kick the ball to me through sheer spite, even though I was the bloke in the best position to receive the ball." Just one more sentence. "I got the feeling he couldn't stand anyone who was a good player or did more media than him. How did you respond to that?
I didn't know about it, to be honest, because I didn't read his book. So I probably found out years later.
Years later?
Oh, yeah, because it wasn't true, so it wasn't an issue. So it's not like he ever came and had that conversation with me to say, I think, you got a problem? Are you not kicking me the ball? Or we've never had that conversation our whole life. So there's a part of Jason that is about the flair and the outside and telling the story, and the truth may be slightly just one out, one back. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of those. There's, if you want to go back on tape, you'll see plenty of vision of me giving the ball to him. Or, I always ultimately think I'm a team player and always have been a team player. That's probably why I'm still in coaching.
Did you ever challenge him about that?
Yeah, I challenged Jason a lot, and that was probably the bit that scarred our relationship a little bit, because I was always the one to say, Jason, you can't do that. That affects the team. You can't talk poorly about your teammates. You can't talk poorly about Leigh. You can't tell the world that Nigel Lappin's got broken ribs going into a grand final. Like all those sorts of things. I was probably the one, as a leader, I felt like I was probably the one harping at him the most, and that's probably why he has more, resentment against me for that.
How's the relationship now?
Oh, really good. I think that everyone gets older and wiser, and the past is the past. I saw him quite a bit when I was in Brisbane and brought him to training and got him to meet the players. I felt it was really important to get some of that past connection back to the club when I spent my short time in Brisbane. So he came and did some training sessions with the players. So yeah, really good. As time heals all wounds, Mike.
Justin, have a look at that. It was a grand final parade.
Yeah.
Was there any conversation that day?
Absolutely. We always chatted. We were actually really close in the 90s, in the late 90s. We'd go out together. We lived not far from each other, and held caps at the pub together, and so on and so forth. So we were close. When Jason, probably after his Brownlow medal win, that probably where for him, he's thought of wanting to grow his media stature and all that sort of stuff. So he might think that it was me having a go at that I want to do more media, but it was more what was being said, not how much was being said.
So for the record, you never looked up and saw Ackermanis clear and changed your direction to not kick it to him?
I'll never do that in a million years to anybody. I don't care
No,
if
I
it's my
don't
worst
think you
enemy.
would, but that clears it unequivocally.
Yeah, yes, it's sad you have to talk about it, but yes.
Did Leigh ever get involved in that situation? Was it a situation when you were playing?
Yeah, it was. Leigh did a terrific job of keeping the leaders and the relationship with Jason intact. There was more than one occasion where not just myself but other leaders were like, I think this is it, we're done with him, it's sort of had enough. Don't know whether Jason knows that or not, but and there was one particular time when Leigh brought him into the leadership group on my last season in 2006 where I thought that was probably going too far, and I think Leigh probably had the mentality of, keep your enemies closer than your friends, and thought if you bring Jason involved it might work, but in fact it probably didn't, and it didn't, because that was the year Jason, the year I retired was also the year Jason and Leigh's relationship moved on as well. So Leigh tried his absolute darnest to keep that group together and keep us all happy and involved, and his management skills were second to none. Not many coaches could keep that relationship with Jason, and not just me, but his other teammates that at times were fragmented with, together, and to still perform at such a high level.
Leigh had absolute faith in you, didn't he? I remember a game in 2000, Etihad Stadium, North Melbourne playing Brisbane. You're at centre-half back playing on the best player that I've ever seen. Wayne Carey's kicked 5 goals to half-time, and the coach leaves you at centre-half back. Pick it up from there.
Well, he left me there because Wayne kicked his 4th, and then he put Daryl White on him just at the end of the second quarter, and within 3 seconds he'd thrown Daryl out the way and kicked another one. So he went, well, maybe this isn't going to work either. So I went back on him, and you'd think this is a beauty of being young, Michael, and not really knowing what you're doing, but you think you'd be a bit more defensive when you come out and play, but I went out and kicked 4 goals the other way in the second half. So. Yeah.
And you blokes got in front, didn't you? I think you hit the front late in the last quarter.
40 points down at three-quarter time, and nearly, we probably should have won. The last play of the game, Marcus Ashcroft was nearly pole drive into the dirt, and probably should have got a free kick, to be honest, and maybe won that game. But yeah, we come from 40 points down at three-quarter time and nearly snatched it.
North won by 4 points.
Yeah.
Have you ever crossed paths with the Ducks since then?
Yeah, I have. Actually, we were in Bali for my 10-year wedding anniversary, and he was there, and had a good chat. He loves to bring it up, Wayne. Whenever I do a media interview, he still sort of shakes his head. I don't think he can believe the cockiness of someone to actually attempt something like that.
Yeah. So that's your natural style, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Even though you'd had 4 kicked against you, but 5 according to most people watching the game. If you saw the ball and there was an opportunity to run, that's what you did.
Yeah, and it wasn't... it was probably changed. The era I was, was it 17 years ago, defenders really defended hard first and they weren't rebounders. And now the modern day game's got a balance of both. But definitely the key defenders never rebounded. They were, we hear stories of past of, Bruce Dool and the odd one here and there that were a little bit more attacking. But sort of that era, the 2000 onwards era, started to bring out the attacking key defender a little bit, and it was good fun.
You're a backman at heart, though, aren't you? Even though you started as a forward, do you not refer to the backline blokes as working in the men's department? Yeah,
the men's department. It was a little saying that Andrew Buse brought up from Geelong, 94, and I was a forward then, so it probably used to irk me a little bit, but I kept it going when we were back there.
Are you ever guilty of saying that the midfielders are just non-accountable blokes who chase kicks and don't worry about picking anyone up?
Absolutely, everyone says that. Everyone seems to bag the other area.
When you're talking about Voss, Black and Co.
Yeah, well, they just kept winning the ball, so it didn't matter. And that's the beauty about, that's the funny thing about when you're in a terrific team. You get accolades, you're winning games, but the ball's coming in less, and when it does, it's coming in a lot more pressured, and so your job's much more easier. So the actual hardest part of footy is when you're near the bottom of the ladder and it's coming in a lot, under no pressure really. So it's quite funny. The easiest part of your career was probably when people thought you were going the best. Yeah.
I've got a hypothetical for you. We mentioned Vossi.
Yeah.
The Brisbane blokes revere Vossi, and rightly so. Voss at his best against Martin Dustin of 2017.
Yeah, geez, it's a good question, because we tend to forget, don't we? You watch an old tape of Michael Voss and think, wow, that's just special. I think Michael was probably a cross between Martin and Cochin, to be honest, as a player. The way Trent ball was in is similar to the way Michael goes head first. Dustin doesn't tend to go head first into packs, but Dustin's got that outside game. His ability to do everything with the ball. There's not a thing he can't, and he's tough. And I'm not answering your question at all, am I? I'm sitting on the fence big time. But
all right, let me soften it a bit.
Okay.
Who would win out of the Brisbane teams of 2001 to 4 and the Richmond team of 2017?
Of course, Richmond would smash them by 100 points.
You're a fibber.
We actually, Dusty asked that. He goes, do you think they're going to put in the paper Richmond's team versus Brisbane's back then? I said, maybe. I said, you'll have to play on Vossi, and we're going through all the different potential matchups. It's quite funny. But look, they're all good things for the public to have a bit of a gasbag about.
I think the Brisbane team that we talked about, I think that's as good a team as I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think individually is the most talented when I look at a lot of the teams and, just across the line. We still had some really good role players that are underrated, like Sean Hart and Marcus Ashcroft.
Craig McRae.
Yeah. He probably invented that small pressure forward type player.
Yep.
His goals to get 10 tackles a game 17 years ago, and now it's something we see quite a bit in every team.
Are you a better coach now than you were when you coached Brisbane?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you get better with every year you're in the system. I think losses and hardships tend to make you more reflective, hence make you a better person and decision maker. Even Damien says now that, geez, some of the stupid things we did in 2010 when we first started at Richmond, and I'm the same with my time at Brisbane. You look back at all the mistakes you made as a coach and what you do differently, and even the things you focused on, as simple as that. Why would I focus on that? I should have focused more in this area. So it's not saying you're wrong, but you just sort of didn't have it all together. And having said that, though, I also know I was just a little bit in the wrong place at the wrong time. My time as a coach there at the Lions.
Although, if you had have completed your contract in Brisbane, you would have coached there in 2017 and then got the flick, and Richmond won the flag.
Well, maybe Brisbane would have won the flag, Mike, so you don't know.
Or maybe Richmond wouldn't have.
Maybe Richmond would have.
Now, I think lots of us think that people like Michael Voss, yourself, Brett Ratton, you've got to be better coaches now than you were when you had the senior job. Yet it seems like your papers have been stamped. Not yours individually, but collectively of those blokes who get the flick.
Maybe your media outlets can change that perception,
Well, I
Michael.
think we should. I mean, I can't understand why that. I can't understand why people wouldn't say you would be better now than you were 3 years ago.
The American system really celebrate that, your losses as much as your wins in coaching, and it's almost a seal of approval the more experience you've had in the American competitions. But we tend to do that. Whether it's right or wrong, who knows? But I think clubs have to be courageous enough. They're the ones that have to change it. A CEO or a board member to say, look, we don't care that he's had a bad history, whether we think that he's perfect for our organisation right now. So, look, maybe we have got some growing up to do in that industry, but wouldn't it be great to see a guy like Rats or Michael back in the coaching ranks again?
Would you do it again?
Yeah, I don't know, Mike, to be perfect. I'm still probably at the phase where I'm still happy where I'm at. Ask me in 3 years' time, 2 years' time, may be completely different. But it's a really high-pressure job. It's a lot going on. It's a really a job that takes away from your family, and people probably don't appreciate the enormity of it, that role itself. And a lot of the time, it's a very thankless task as well. So it's a big thing to give up. I know it's a well-paid job as well, so a lot of guys get into it for that reason as well. But ultimately, you do give up a lot to do that job.
How did you feel when the club that you'd given so much to and had been such a mutually beneficial arrangement, when they tipped you out at the end of 2016?
Yeah, well, obviously shattered. I mean, it's not something that any time you go through something like that, it's not a good thing to be dumped as a coach. But yeah, upon reflection, that's what the club needed. You know, needed a fresh start. There was so much negativity surrounding the club. There was so much change. There was so many, there's so many things going on. In my time as a coach, I had a new board, a new CEO, a new footy manager, new fitness manager, new welfare manager. The whole time there couldn't get any settled. I think we had about 25 debutants when I coached. It was a really unsettled time when I was at the footy club, and so I knew I was going to go into that though. So it wasn't like I was blinded and. But
you're so optimistic, you blokes, aren't you? Blokes who are setting out on their coaching careers, they always take the optimistic view.
Yeah, and probably blindly a little bit for me, being a young coach there. About I can turn this around. I've got a really good game plan. I think I've got all these things, but really. It's almost irrelevant. You get to Brisbane and the biggest issue is retaining kids and keep making a happy club. That was more my brief than anything.
Quinton Hull, the Brisbane-based ABC journalist, said this of you after you left. He said, quote, Norm Smith could not coach his way out of this one. He said there was a poor list, no real leadership and the worst facilities in the AFL. Does that give you any comfort?
A little bit. The facilities thing I'll try not to worry too much about. I think they're very important and I think that helps with the retention. But you can win flags with average facilities, but you definitely need a strong list that's healthy. I mean, I think we had the worst injury rate too in the comp, not having Dane Beams there, and so there's a lot of things like that play a part. Look, and by the end, that makes you desperate, and then as a coach, you make desperate decisions and make mistakes as well. So it just. Ultimately, I think the right decision was made to cut it fresh and let everyone start again.
Well, I suppose numerically, 14 wins from 66, it's going to put you under the hammer, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's circumstantial. There's coaches that had 5, 6, 7 seasons that, haven't played finals yet that might start getting under the pump. And there's coaches that only get a small window of opportunity and need it. It really depends on a lot of factors, I think. I don't necessarily think that it's just the win-loss, because if you're asking that of a coach that's to play a lot of young kids and then say, but by the way, you're getting judged on win-loss, I don't think anyone would take the job under those circumstances. So it's the club have to be united on what they want to set as their goals. If it is win-loss, great. It might be development of players. It might be how many games get into young kids. It might be a lot of different factors for them to hit their eventual goals of playing finals and winning premierships.
Before we go, do you know Frank the Tank? Who is he, Justin?
Alistair Lynch? Yeah. Frank the Tank, never heard of him.
Never heard of him?
Oh, no, I said before I like to have a bit of fun, and I do like the fun side of footy, but Frank the Tank, even said at the movie Old School, he was a bit of the ringleader of the fun and the party, so I adopted that nickname towards the end of the year.
You adopted it or you were given it?
Well, one or the other.
Hey, Justin, it's been great to have you on the program. I genuinely love watching you play. You're skillful, athletic, adventurous, and I love the way that you just surged out of defence as if it didn't matter what part of the ground you were on. Good to see you. Congratulations on now 4 flags and good luck for 2018.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.